I'm looking at a picture of Tammy Haas from her high school graduation party. In the bottom right corner of the photograph, there's a date. It says June 9th, 1991. It's a profile picture taken when she wasn't looking. You can see her sandy blonde hair flowing down and back past her shoulders. She's wearing a short-sleeved knit shirt with a dark collar with large squares of color, red, medium blue, and light blue on her back right shoulder. Her earrings are large and round with a dark, patterned stone encircled with gold. Her right hand is close to her mouth, a bracelet on her wrist. Her fingernails are perfectly manicured. Her thumb is close to her mouth, and it looks like she's biting down on her thumbnail. She's thinking something, but I can't tell what. Even without looking at the camera, she draws you in with subtle nuances. She had that effect on people. When I talk to Tammy's friends, they all tell me the same thing. She wasn't a light in a dark room. She was the light. She was special. She was special. Maybe it was that. I don't know. But something caught my eye in April of 2021 when I saw her picture on the front page of a newspaper in South Dakota. I usually don't look at newspaper headlines, but for some reason, I was drawn to that article on that day. It was April 14th, 2021, and the FBI had held a press conference the day before, announcing a $15,000 reward for information pertaining to her death in 1992. The day of the press conference would have been Tammy's 48th birthday. Sometime in the late hours of September 17th and 18th, 1992, Tammy died under mysterious circumstances. Her boyfriend, Eric Stukel, was tried and acquitted for manslaughter in 1996. The case remains unsolved. Her friends and family were left without answers. Join us as we dig into the case files and rumors and try to find the truth of what happened to Tammy Haas. This is Footsteps in the Dark, Season 1, Tammy Haas, and I'm your host, Chad Zimmerman. If you want to see the pursuit for truth in Tammy's case continue, please consider supporting us. You can do this in a number of different ways. First, you can join our Patreon site. This is where you'll find all of the in-depth analysis that went into our conclusions and lots of behind-the-scenes information. You can support us by buying merchandise, or you can donate. All of these options can be found on our website at footstepsinthedarkpodcast.com. And if you like the song by John Slap Myers, Tammy's Ghost, that we use at the end of each episode as a prelude to the next, please download it. It's just 99 cents and you can find it on iTunes. And as always, we thank you for your support. It really does mean everything to us. This podcast contains themes and language intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised. Yankton, South Dakota is a product of the Lewis and Clark expedition and rests along the Missouri River. Its close proximity to the river made it a useful destination as pioneers moved west following the Louisiana Purchase. Yankton was the first capital of the Dakota Territory, and settlement began in 1858, and a fort was built in 1862. It's surrounded by rolling prairie and fertile farmland intersected with several small rivers, creeks, and ravines. Its most notable feature is its close proximity to the Gavins Point Dam. The construction of the dam in the 1950s led to the creation of the Lewis and Clark Lake, a popular destination for campers, beachgoers, and fishermen. Yankton's population is just under 15,000 and is the major population center for Yankton County, with just 7,000 more residents peppered throughout the remainder of the county. Unknown to many, Yankton's history boasts names like Lieutenant Colonel Custer, Jack McCall, Lyle Elzado, and Tom Brokaw. Yankton's WNAX radio paved the way for a young band leader named Lawrence Welk. It's here where a young dental assistant named Nancy from a farm near Irene, South Dakota, would take a tire into Montgomery Ward to get repaired by a young man named Steve Haas, and Nancy caught his eye. Soon they began dating, and they fell in love. A marriage soon followed, and before long, Nancy was pregnant. And on April 13th, 1973, Stephen and Nancy Haas gave birth to their first child, a healthy little girl with pretty brown eyes, and they named her Tamara Ann.
With this quick story, so I was going. A gal was picking me up to go to the firemen's auxiliary meeting, and she, I guess at the time, she didn't know I was pregnant. I don't know if I had even met her before. And I went to get in the car, and she goes, "Oh, when are you due?" And I said, 3 days ago. And I'll never forget the look on her face. And then, lo and behold, got home. And that was at the point when ladies would stay a long time. It was my mother-in-law's era. That was their only night out, doing things. And so I probably, who knows what time I even got home. It was probably like, 10:30, 11. And at midnight I went into labor. And she was born at 3 o'clock a.m. So, yeah, it was, yes.
How was, what were things with her that maybe you noticed in that first year that later down the road you said, oh yeah, we could see that, at an early age?
Oh. I mean, I don't know. I suppose her personality, thinking, that she wasn't one to throw temper tantrums or anything like that. Yeah, just, sweet little girl.
Say that again.
A sweet little girl. Yeah.
Like a great competitor being held out of the start of a game, the 3 extra days in the womb seemed like a penalty to the start of life, and little Tammy wanted to catch up. She was sitting up by 6 months and walking by 9, and she never looked back. With energy to burn, coupled with her captivating charm and positivity, her parents enrolled her in ballet at the age of 3, and whether it was Tammy taking to the stage or the stage taking to her, who knows, but it worked, and a little star was born for a second time.
Well, then she started ballet classes at 3 years old, and that was just, clear up till she was 18 and out of high school. That was just, always that part since she was 3 years old. Actually started in the basement of the ballet teacher's house, and then the teacher eventually opened up her own. And she really got to know, of course, that's how, here you go, see, from that young age, And then when the ballet teacher came from Poland, and then she got and worked for the original teacher. Then they got close, and then it must have been not until after Tammy was out, or Tammy just stayed with the original dance studio. Then Dorota started her own dance studio here in Yankton.
And while she'd hold the dancing stage for many years, it was just 3 years that she'd hold the stage at home, as it wasn't long before she gained a new baby brother, Mark, and a few years after that, another brother, Paul. With the size of the family increasing, Steve Haas found a partner and opened his own tire store, which allowed him to pursue his lifelong dream of becoming a fireman. By all accounts, life was good for the Haas family, and they found themselves firmly rooted in the community of Yankton. They embodied the typical middle-class family, where they worked hard, became active in their church, and cultivated close bonds with friends and neighbors. And as Tammy grew, so did her circle of friends.
Well, we knew each other in like middle school, but we didn't really become friends until we were friends in high school, so to speak, as far as we were in classes together. And I was a really good student, not to brag, and Tammy kind of struggled, so I helped her a lot with some classes. You'd have a really bad day, and she would just make it better because she was all about life and all about laughing and having a good time. It's not to mean that she didn't like have feelings or anything. She totally did, but she wanted to make the best of every situation. So you laughed a lot when you were with her.
As I began reaching out to Tammy's friends to learn more about her, it became apparent how much Tammy, the person, has been missed, and tragically how everything today has become about the case and the mystery.
Tammy and I, it was fun, but even when things were serious, we would joke and make fun, and we would be able to get through things, okay? I don't even know where to start. Just an infectious laugh and personality, that butterfly spirit. You know, we could make jokes out of absolutely nothing. And I don't think a lot of people might know a lot about that. I came across actually a letter from her, probably about, I don't know, I told Nancy about it because I wrote Nancy a letter, and I just had to let her know that I came across this letter that just, you know, it made me think of her, you know, as my closest friend. It made me think of your mother myself. I mean, I had all these fun emotions and sad emotions came through in this letter. She had actually wrote it when she was in college, before when she was at UNL. I think that there are a lot of people, because they stereotype her because she's so beautiful, that and it burns me that, because I've heard it before, is that, you know, she was drinking, you know, she was wild, okay? That my whole class was like that, pretty much. I mean, you know what I mean? Just because you drink and have fun doesn't mean that you have death coming to you. And that's the part that I think, you know, that the stereotype of thinking, oh, she's, you know, so beautiful, and, you know, thinking that because she's so beautiful and she drank a lot that she got around, air quotes, and that's not the case. And people, I think that's one of the reasons why I've never even joined Facebook, is because there's so many people involved in trying to make out what they thought and who she was. They didn't even know her. And that bothers me. I mean, it's a sacred trust with friendship, and for people to be talking about what they think happened and who she is, it's just bothering. It's just not right. And let's see, what else can I share? I worked with her. I started working at the country club at 14. So I lifeguarded there, and I also waitressed, and Tammy and I waitressed together along with Katie. So we were together pretty much on men's night, women's night, and on different occasions that were at the country club. Let's see. So it was mostly work, and then also track. We both ran together. And she did more long distance, like 800 and stuff. But we would, you know, we always ran track together as well. So hung out during track meets and things like that when we could, if we weren't running. So there's a lot more to Tammy than just, you know, partying and drinking. There's, plus her whole dance side. I mean, we went to the Nutcracker when she was in. And, so there's...
As Tammy grew and started to blossom as a young woman, she began to turn heads, and one night she was noticed by Todd Nielsen.
Very first time I met her was, it would have been like the summer of '88, and I was at a house party after I'd just gotten back from, I was in the National Guard, so I went to basic training, '87 and '88. I got back. I did my AIT, I did split. And I'd just gotten back, and I was actually even wearing some yellow sweats that I'd gotten when I was at training. And I was at an after house party, and I saw her there, and coincidentally, she was wearing a yellow sweater. I totally remember exactly the first time I ever met her. And then I didn't even know who she was, and I'd never met her before or nothing, but like I felt like when I first met her, like she's very pretty. But even at that time, she was only, I was going into college, and she was going into her sophomore year, which is really weird. I mean, when you think about your daughters, you probably think that's disgusting, but I feel like the very first time I met her, we met eyes and we had a connection. And then I found out later that she had, and this is the bad part. I want to be honest with you, but I don't want to be mean about anything. But I realized that she had snuck out of her house. And so I didn't know that. But, so, we were there for several hours, and, and then I think when I was getting ready to go, I was like, hey, do you need a ride to get back into your house? Or what? I didn't know what was going on. So that's the very first time we met. And I actually took her back to her house and dropped her off on the street, and she did her thing, and snuck back in or whatever. But that was the very first time we met. But after that, we her parents were really strict. So they didn't allow her so I went to college, and we talked on the phone very sparingly, her parents wouldn't let her talk after 9. And, her dad was ended up being the fire chief in Yankton. I don't know if you heard that, but, and then I think what drew me, I mean, I was able to take her on a couple of days, but they were still like, well, he's older, I don't know about that, and we would meet, and I would pick her up, and we would go to high school parties together, because I still had a connection with Nathan. I still had a lot of buddies that were younger than me that I'm really good friends with. So I have pictures of us hanging out at parties. I have pictures of us, pictures of her in her bedroom. I spent time with her at some of her church outings. And as a matter of fact, this is kind of weird, but I was at one of the church outings when the van came through. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the state hospital people, and one escaped and killed one of the escapees that just drove by us and killed the music teacher Chabernau's family in the hills that night that they were camping out down at the lake. But I was down there helping them put up tents and throwing the ball back and forth. So I was kind of involved in their, what you might call, Luther League thing, where I just kind of was supporting them and doing different things. But then, so I got really close with her, and I know I'm not like you said, it's just flashes of this and flashes of that. But I got really close with her. And
Todd texted me some of the pictures that he still has of Tammy. One of them looks like the late 80s version of a selfie. Tammy's holding the camera up in front of her face. It's rather close and shows her from the neck up to just a few inches above her head. She's smiling and looking directly into the lens. She's standing against her bedroom door, and there are pages and cutouts from magazines taped to it. Something that was a habit of hers. To this day, if you see the back of her door, you'll see magazine pages taped to it. Something her mother, Nancy, could never take down. It was 1989. Tammy was in love, and everything seemed to be moving in the right direction for the Haas family. But everything would change on October 15th. Steve Haas, Nancy's husband and the father to Tammy, Mark, and Paul, was working outside where he would have a playful conversation with a neighbor, then suddenly collapse in front of the house.
Her dad passed away. I mean, my mother had just talked to him like a half an hour, and he was mowing the lawn. And my mother had just had surgery, so she was practicing walking up and down the sidewalk. And he just made a comment to her, "What are you doing, Betty?" or something like that. And she's like, she had surgery and she had to build up her strength and stuff. And she said by the time she got back home, which was only 6 houses, she turned around and the ambulance was there. And Steve passed away that day. And that was a hard day,
Other than telling me that it was hard, which I know it was.
Yeah. Well, you
What was
tried.
it like? What was it for? So I'm assuming you found him.
Yes. Mhm.
So, and what went through your mind in that moment?
My mind was that I needed to get right into the house and call 911. And I yelled, and then the neighbor next door, where you met Marlette, then he quick ran over, and he had been a fireman, he had been a policeman, so then I'm assuming, see, of course it was so quick, that he would have tried CPR, and then went, let's see, of course, and then the ambulance came, and I think really my first thought was the kids, because, and they, thankful, I guess, they weren't here. Tammy was actually at a church hayride, and both the boys had been a swim team. I don't know if I had mentioned that. So they were both at swim meet practice. So then, news travels quick. So different, the family went and got them, and then it was at the hospital then where he was pronounced dead.
Rough.
Very, very rough.
I read somewhere in one of the files from one of Tammy's friends, I don't remember which one it was, that Steve had a heart attack.
Right. Well, that's what we're assuming, a massive heart attack. And his brother and his sister, so he was 38. His brother, talk about then their parents. Like say a year and 4 months later, he was 42 years old. Zach, same thing. I mean, they're here 1 second and then they're just gone. They're just gone. And then the sister was 52. Zach, same thing for her. 1 second standing in the kitchen and next gone. I think Roger, he was just going on a walk with someone, just gone. Steve, he was just painting fence 1 second and said he was gonna come to the house to whatever. Next second I came around and there he was on the driveway. Gone.
Steve's loss would change the family dynamic, causing Nancy to wear both parental hats, and it would leave Tammy and her brothers without the presence of their loving father. Coping with Steve's loss would become an individual process. It was 1989, and most Midwesterners dealing with tragedy did so by keeping their noses down and their minds busy. It was something that time would heal. From talking with her friends, it seems like this is how Tammy also coped, as the pain would rarely crack her upbeat and positive facade. Yet in hindsight, it appears that her disdain for the family rules and proclivity for socializing may have become an increased outlet to deal with her father's loss, and eventually drove a wedge between Tammy and Todd.
And then her dad died suddenly at the age of 40. And it's interesting because I sat with the family at the funeral with her 2 little brothers and her mom and Tammy. And my real close bond came with her like after her father died, because I thought that I was going to be her savior, her family's savior, and I was going to be take care of the family. And that brought me really, my bond with her like really, really close. And I'll be honest with you, I was completely and totally in love with Tammy, and I thought she was completely, well, I felt that she was completely and totally in love with me too. But
So somewhere in all these records that I read, somebody mentions about you sneaking into their house one night. Tell me.
Yeah, I did do that.
And did that result in a long conversation with Nancy?
Yeah, a long conversation, and but I think I was, like I said, I was really, really in love with her, and at that time, like I said, I didn't want to say anything bad about Tammy, but it got to be a pretty bad situation. And then after that, I think immediately after that, I realized, like, this is just too much. I'm like, I just need to let this go. You know, I came to my senses, like, you know, I love this girl, but like, she's still only, like, I think maybe at that time she was maybe a junior or something like that, and she needed to live her life and do her things, and I just let it go, you know. But we had stayed in touch. After that, and she wanted me to come visit her several times when she was in Nebraska, and I just said, no, you just need to live your life and like figure out, like, and get that stuff out of your system, and like if it works out, like maybe we'll be together someday, you know. So I kind of like pushed her off after that, but
I was able to find 3 video clips of Tammy taken while she was in high school. There's a short clip taken at a Yankton High School football game, and Tammy's in the stands sitting with the band, and you can see her with her saxophone. She's leaning forward with her mouth open wide as she sticks her tongue out at the camera. In another, she's strolling along the sidelines, walking away from the camera. She's wearing a light blue jacket that's large and puffy, and she smiles and again sticks her tongue out as a playful gesture to the cameraman. The third is the longest, at just 11 seconds, and she's wearing a light gray South Dakota sweatshirt. It's taken in the hallway of the high school. She's wearing large silver earrings that swing and dance with her movements as she gestures towards and away from the camera. She's saying something, but you can't make out the words, but she seems just like how everyone I've talked to describes her. Happy and gregarious. Her upbeat attitude and ability to accept anyone is what made her a friend to everyone, and is no surprise that she'd be elected to royalty during her senior homecoming, though she would finish runner-up.
You know, she was someone who was liked by everyone, and she in turn liked everyone. So, yeah, she was always bubbly. She, when we were younger, I would say was a little bit more reserved, probably a little bit more on the quiet, shy side. And then I would say came out more probably when we were in middle high school, and maybe kind of found her niche a little bit more than you know, she kind of more then started to explore the maybe fine arts group a little bit more. She discovered that she really loved plays. She really loved dance. I did not experience dance with her, but a couple of our girlfriends did, whom I'm sure you've spoken with. So that was definitely a very big passion of hers. You know, I think when I think back to Tammy, she was absolutely so proud of the fact that she was nominated to our royalty court when we were seniors. And likewise, and I say this with a little giggle because she was crushed that she didn't win. And all of us who were on the court, we were just all such good friends that I remember the majority of us thinking, like, we weren't even thinking about who was going to win, because we were just proud that we were up there, but she was crushed by it. So we kind of teased her a little bit about that.
And it's here, during her senior year, that one of Tammy's friends would break up with a boy, and that boy would express interest in Tammy. An unlikely suitor and a sophomore underclassman named Eric Stukel.
So we're not going out anymore, and every time that we would get together after Katie and I would get done working, we'd be with Tammy, and then we would meet down either by the river, or if we'd go to a party or something, it would be me, Katie, and Tammy, and then, of course, we would be with Eric and the rest of, kind of the group and stuff. And because I was going out with Eric, obviously Tammy was with me. It was a little bit more of an introduction, I would say, was that Tammy was always with me, and if I was with Eric since I was dating him, there you go. Fast forward just a little bit, Eric and I are done, and Eric tells me that he would really like it if I would introduce him, or if we could hang out more with Tammy. And I'm like, really? So that's kind of how it was. There wasn't any type of a jealousy thing, besides thinking it's a little weird, that I'm like, Tammy, really? But really meaning you can be with anybody that you want. Why are you being attracted to him? But then again, look at me. I mean, I was attracted to him for something.
Just your laugh. You can't ever forget that. Can't imitate it too either. No, I mean, hell, most of the time when you're just kind of, yeah, she make you float.
She's one of those girls that when she looked at you and talked to you, you just kind of went, she's talking to me,
More than that. A lot more than that. Yeah. Like, I remember when Stukel comes over, he was just all smiley. Like, guess what? Going on to date with Tammy Haas, and I didn't know who she was then. I had never seen her. I thought she was somebody else. I thought she was a Kubel, like the oldest Kubel, and I was like, fuck, she ain't a big deal. She's kind of fucking ugly, if you ask me. Then I seen her one day in the auditorium, the gymnasium, the first time I ever seen her. I was like, what? Because Stukel was at Carl's looking at some car stereo shit, and she came in and said hi to him, and he was like, yeah. Yeah. I mean, she had that. She knew how to not use it. She knew how to be it. I mean, that was the thing about her. That's what made her even more beautiful. She wasn't a conceited bitch. Oh, better than you. She wasn't better than anybody.
Unlike the popular, well-to-do types that she'd been accustomed to dating, Eric was different. He was tall and thin with curly black hair that draped down to the sides of his forehead. He operated with a casual, I don't really care kind of unkept attitude, mellow and unconcerned. Or as one of his friends would later tell the FBI, he was the kind of guy that would wake up and put whatever clothes were crumpled on the floor on and go about his day. He was into skateboarding, alternative music, and had an attraction to marijuana and alcohol. With his parents burdened with the family business, a 24-hour frying pan restaurant to manage, Eric was able to do what he wanted, when he wanted, without fear of discipline. Quite the opposite of Tammy, who had a home with rules and expectations. And this wouldn't be the first case of someone finding love from the other side of the tracks. Tammy, with her beauty and popularity encumbered by strict rules, falling for the unkept, mellow, and carefree attitude of Eric Stukel.
I mean, we used to play doctor. We got caught playing doctor when we were little. I was at their house almost every day of my childhood until, of course, you start to separate when you get older. One goes this direction and the other goes the other. But Douglas Street was a close-knit little street. We all hung out together.
How did Eric change as he got older?
Kind of rebellious, skateboarder, kind of like wanted to be that kind of punk guy, that soft-spoken, kind of quiet, mysterious guy, He always had a skateboard. He was always doing that kind of stuff. His parents, I feel bad for the Stukel kids a little bit because they didn't have a very good home life. And what I mean by that is Don and Dave were workaholics. They were never home. They constantly had different babysitters over there, and some were inappropriate, but growing up, they were fun to be around because, you go to the Stukel house and you could do whatever the hell you wanted and nobody cared, But you kind of wonder if that has something to do with why he kind of changed. But he was always that, kind of a quiet guy, but had that mysterious rebellion side to him. Like, he's quiet, but he's the badass. He's the guy you want to hang out with because he's so mysterious. And he was a good looking kid. He really was. But I wasn't a skateboarder girl, so I didn't fit into the clan anymore.
During one research trip to Yankton, Tammy's mother, Nancy, provided me with a box filled with old VHS tapes. As I glanced through the box, one stood out. It was the tape of her high school graduation party. It was taken by a handheld camera, and the video looks exactly like you'd expect from the early 1990s. The camera bouncing and swinging around with the hopes of catching something interesting. Most of the tape was recorded by a family friend, Maria. It starts off with a clip of Tammy's brother Mark, dressed in a white, short-sleeve button-down and gray dress pants. He's carrying a small suitcase, and you can see his glasses and wavy dark hair. He's tall and thin and looks like a younger version of Egon Spengler from Ghostbusters. 19 seconds into the tape, Tammy arrives wearing a short-sleeved, multicolored shirt and baggy dark shorts, and she prances up the steps to the front door.
I'm home, I'm graduating. My degree's even signed, or whatever you call that thing. It is, so it's official, huh? First thing I looked at. Is it signed?
The video shows party attendees throughout the house and in the backyard where the tables are set up and people of all ages are gathering, watching Tammy unwrap gifts. Food is offered on platters in the kitchen and consists of typical graduation fare: potato chips, cookies, fruit salad, and ham sandwiches on dollar buns. Outside, her younger brother, Paul, is carrying his pet turtle around and showing everyone. It's a windy day, and the audio is hard to make out due to the gust of wind across the microphone.
That thing. Oh. I couldn't believe I actually picked it up and peed all over when I picked it up.
Oh, I sure wasn't lying.
Get it away. It was pee.
Paul likes that though, and that was nice of you to pick it up for me. Did we find out?
Yes, threw it on the back seat of the car. And it was crawling all over, and I had my feet out. I was scared it was going to claw my leg.
The video brings you back to the early 90s with mullets, bright clothes with crazy patterns, silk shirts, and baggy pants. And everyone looks like they've come straight out of a John Hughes movie. As I was watching the tape, I was wondering if Eric would be seen in it. Then I realized I wasn't the only person wondering where he was, as Tammy exclaimed her disdain that he wasn't there yet.
Eric better get his butt over here. I'm going to kill him.
At 25 minutes and 50 seconds into the recording, as one of Tammy's friends is filling his plate with food, a tall, tan, dark-haired boy enters the frame and walks past the camera, stopping and pausing at the entrance to the living room. Shortly after, Eric is seen sitting casually on the couch in the living room with his head extended back, and he's often seen tapping with his index finger above his right cheek near the side of his right eye, or blowing air into his cheek and pushing it out by pressing it with his finger. He's wearing a blue short-sleeved t-shirt and plaid pants, slouching back on the couch with his knees bent, his left foot up on the couch with his black tennis shoes, and his legs spread apart. Whereas most people seen in the tape have dressed for the occasion and are acting with a sense of formality, Eric seems generally unconcerned, as though he's just gotten up. It's as I'm watching Eric on the couch that I realize something else. The couch that he's sitting on and many of the wall decorations seen in the video of the living room in 1991 are the same then as they are today. The end of the tape has Tammy leaving the party to make her own rounds. She's changed into light denim shorts and is walking away from the house and into the street towards a dark blue four-door sedan parked across the street. She opens the door and sits down. She makes a gesture with her left hand, maybe a peace sign, and the tape cuts off. Tammy's graduation marked the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. In a few months, she would head off to college in Lincoln, Nebraska. The long-distance relationship was difficult to maintain, and Tammy began meeting new people. It was here, in Lincoln, during the fall of her freshman year in 1991, that Tammy would meet a new boy named Rob Simons, and she and Eric would drift apart over the next few months, eventually breaking up in October, and Tammy would start formally dating Rob. With Eric out of the picture and being surrounded by new scenery and people, Tammy would continue charming strangers and making new friends. Like most new college students, her new life away from Yankton was beginning to take shape.
Yeah, she was really, really funny, and a lot of people would probably say quirky, but I just adored her. I loved her little quirks and her funny little, just the way about her. And her big thing was the Marlboro Lights and the Diet Mountain Dew. And that was always kind of a running joke. We all smoked cigarettes and stuff back then.
On the outside, Tammy's new world seemed to be heading in the right direction. Yet, on the inside, she was finding life away from Eric challenging, and her mind would still wander. Something she would write about in January 1992 to her friend Marjo. Written on a regular notebook paper and dated Tuesday, January 21st, 1992, Tammy's words are formed with the same exuberant and bubbly kinds of letters you'd expect from someone with her personality, and begins with the typical teenager early 90s greeting. Hey, hun, what's up? Not much here. Most of the paragraphs are short and discuss things like who she's seen that they both know, what she's doing at the very moment, and inquiring about Marjo's romantic life. Yet the longest paragraph in the letter is about Eric, which reads in part, Guess who called me tonight? Eric. I'm so depressed. I talked to him for an hour and 15 minutes. He said I was the only girl for him, and he already decided he wouldn't touch any girls unless it was me. He told me not to fall in love down here because we're going to move to L.A. She continues, I'm scared to come home because I'll want to see Eric. I'm glad that he called, but then again, I really wish he wouldn't have, because now I'm going to start talking and thinking about him all the time. This sucks. In the letter, she tells Marjo that she's planning on coming back to Yankton on February 7th, but makes no mention of plans to see Eric, something she didn't always mention to her friends, especially those that thought she could do better, like Marjo.
In her letters to me, she had said that he had some sort of control over her. We've all been in relationships where we know it's not a good relationship for us, but we still
like what we're getting from it.
Yeah.
For some reason, yeah.
For some reason. And when I said that to them, as far as he loved her, I mean, it was this shock and this almost, I can't believe you said that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Over the course of my investigation and review of case files, it became clear that Tammy kept certain things close to her heart, and few knew how much struggle Tammy had letting go of Eric. While most believed Tammy had moved on, I found something that made it clear that neither Tammy or Eric could let go. In a journal entry of Eric's from February 1992, he mentions that Tammy had come back to Yankton to visit Marjo, and Eric and Tammy reconnected for 6 hours during the weekend while she was back in town. His journal entries written a few weeks later and during another extended break from talking to Tammy. It describes his own inner struggles letting go, but in a darker, more mysterious sense, his desire to hold on. The entry is titled, If This Is Love, I'll Take It on My Face. Eric writes about his teenage feelings of angst and loneliness, the abysmal setting of study hall punctuated by the sounds of sniffling and sneezing, and his difficulty being without Tammy. It reads, I was alone for 17 years until I met T. I thought being different was it, and it is and was. But then everyone wanted to be different, so no one recognized me. I sometimes say that I hate Tammy, but I really don't. I just miss her. But I'm afraid that she's totally done with me and thinks I'm just an asshole that played with her mind. Or at least that's what her so-called friends say or keep telling. I really don't hate her friends. I mean, I don't even know them. Actually, I thought they were pretty cool. They just labeled me. I admit that I played with her mind. But you got to if you want to keep going on with a woman. Tammy thinks that she doesn't know me. But what's to know? She thinks I'm different, but I'm really not. I didn't go out with Tammy because I wanted to fuck her. Well, if it ever came to that, that's cool. You see, I'm not really here. Someone special sent me to change her and teach her things about herself. But I guess I fell in love. The more I read Eric's words, the more I started to see a sense of conceit and self-loathing coupled with a bizarre sense of grandiosity. It was he that was sent by some higher power to enlighten Tammy and to teach her, according to a 17-year-old kid. Yet, at times, he shows a sense of humility, such as when he talks about how he mistreated her by smoking pot too much and never buying her anything, and that he used to always tell her that he didn't deserve her. Yet, as the entry continues, it begins to turn darker, as he seems overcome with a sadistic sense of determination to get her back. And he writes, "Remember when I told you don't fall in love because I'm always looking for you? If I find you, I'm taking you to LA with me, even if I have to kill you." Kill Tammy? Yeah, I thought about it once or twice. Little did Tammy know, but Eric concludes his journal with a plan. He's lonely, and he's going to see Tammy. Although Tammy's case has grown cold, that doesn't mean that it's closed. The FBI and Yankton Police Department continue to seek information in the death of Tammy Haas. If you have information, you have options. Call the FBI's Sioux Falls Resident Agency at 605-334-6881, the Yankton Police Department at 605-668-5210, submit a tip at tips.fbi.gov, or lastly, send us a message. Someone knows what happened to Tammy, and maybe you know how to help solve the mystery. Several weeks later, Tammy would leave Lincoln, Nebraska, and move back to Yankton, South Dakota. Academically, her freshman year didn't go as well as planned, and she'd have a summer to try to figure out where she wanted to go and who she wanted to be. The back and forth between her and Eric would tread on dangerous territory as she continued dating Rob in Lincoln. What happened in the summer of 1992, and how did Eric and Tammy end up together at Coronation in September? Her body was found a short distance from the location of the party they attended, but what really happened that night? Never before seen records from interviews of the partygoers reveal what really happened, and more questions, on the next episode of Footsteps in the Dark.
It was just every kid having a good time. It's a Rick Rise, it's homecoming. It's, let's have a good time. We're going to get drunk. We're going to smoke some pot. We're going to go be rebels and go home late and get shit-faced and drive our cars drunk. That's how it was, Everybody was in great spirits. I was walking down that gravel road and when those two showed up, and in passing, she was not being herself. She was not her bubbly self. You could tell like something was on her mind. And so I thought, well, maybe it's true. Maybe she's going to dump him tonight.
Yeah, he called me and he just told me, he's like, "Are you with Tammy?" And I said, "No, I'm going to tonight." He's like, "Well, she didn't, she's not at work." And I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "No, she's not there." I think it was more of a flag that he called me than maybe her just to be missing. I mean, he's never called me before if he stood her up doing something else before, which I've never heard her just not showing up or standing people up. That's really not like her.
Well, you could tell she wanted out of it. I mean, you could tell that it was time to move on.
I remember just assuming, well, let's start looking for her. And then that evening when we were at Cork and Bottle, I don't know if it was that evening or if it was what day it was for sure or not, but, that's when he made that comment to me. She's probably laying dead in a ditch somewhere. I know he knows something. I know. He was with her last. I know it.
I think he figured she was gone, before she was found, I think, because somebody would have heard from her, and he was trying to come to that realization before she was found that, something happened, I think he put that together, in his mind. He was preparing himself for it, somebody to find her,
I had something going on, so I don't think I found out that Travis hadn't heard from her until Saturday when I stopped in Yankton, and Travis said to me, he goes, "Have you heard anything from Tammy?" And I said, "No." And I was like, "Do you have it?" And he was like, "No." We walked in, and he was just sitting there, and it was just very bizarre because we were sitting there, Travis and I, we were very concerned that she was missing, and he was nonchalant about it. There was a shrine, I remember there was a shrine, and then their song was playing.
All of you have been trying to say that for 30 years.
Yeah.
This podcast was written and produced by me, your host, Chad Zimmerman. The song featured in the trailer, Tammy's Ghost, was written and features John Salap on vocals, guitar, and bass, Matt Gedney on guitar, Adam Jones on drums, and Laura Egan and Carl Graber on horns.